Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today panel discussion entitled Teaching and Learning with AI. We are joined today by a few of our faculty members, and I'm going to ask if they'll take a moment to first just briefly introduce themselves, and then we will begin our conversation today. And so, Dr. Maddux, if you'll go first, and then Dr. Blackwell.
Hi, thank you everyone. And My name is Maddux. I'm an assistant professor from the Department of Mathematics. And thank you, Dr. Shiv, for the invitation to allow me to be here to share my humble knowledge about integration of AI in my classroom.
Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Dr. James Blackwell. I'm an assistant professor of history in the Department of History, Politics, and Social Justice. And primarily, I teach the diaspora and African history, and that's the way that I approach kind of using AI in my scholarship and in my teaching. And I look forward to having a conversation with you all today.
Thank you to both of you. And so I do have a few questions I want to ask you today, and we'll just go back and forth, starting with Dr. Maddux and Dr. Blackwell. So the first question for today is, can you share some specific examples of how you've integrated AI tools into your courses?
Yeah, so last summer I had a great opportunity to participate in a summer school organized by Amazon. And during this class, they introduced Party Rock. So Party Rock is an app building sponsored by Amazon, and it requires no coding. So with this tool, I build apps that's ready for use, and I just need to click to share link to student, and student can access the app. So the app can serve multiple purposes depending on how I grade it. And next week at this time, I will present in another city workshop about the Party Rock. So please stay tuned. And another thing that I also integrated in my class this semester is interactive visualization. And I created this myself using R, which is a programming language that we mostly use in statistics. So these interactive charts, they help students, they help to illustrate complex concepts that current tools are unable to handle. And another thing that under development right now on my end is I am trying to automate Excel self-check. So basically, I create like a self-check button in Excel projects that we have in elementary statistics classes, so that students can evaluate their work and fix minor mistakes before their final submission. And it gives them instant feedback.
Great. Thank you. Before we go to you, Dr. Blackwell, I want to give Dr. Edwards an opportunity just to introduce herself, and then we'll transition back into our first question.
And I apologize. I was working on something and time just got away. Nobody knows about that on here, but yes, I'm Yolanda Edwards. Right now, I'm department chair for rehabilitation counseling. And one of my areas that I have really kind of dived into the last couple of years is integrating AI within counseling and rehabilitation counseling. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. And so I'll just repeat that first question for the panelists. Can you share specific examples of how you have integrated AI tools into your courses?
Yeah, so I think so I try to build from still building from what I know and what the students might know. So in my history classes, I'm still trying to fill in that gap. So I think AI is a really good tool from a historical perspective where, an archive might not exist or a document might not exist to kind of make things visual. And so the way in which we do that is through generative AI. And so right now the students are completing projects. So they use generative AI to make images, or they're using them now to make videos. So students just completed one course actually for U.S. history, completed their documentary project, and we'll talk about it probably later, but quite a bit of them use AI to make portions of their videos, kind of make introductions or sections. And so they're using that, and they're also using it to generate images to kind of describe what they kind of want to what they want to visualize to convey these kind of messages. So that's how I started to use it.
And Dr. Edwards, you already alluded to it some. If you want to add on to that, you can.
Yes, the way I have been using it, it kind of has some similarities to Blackwell, but our students, we're training rehab counselors. So, one of the components of just not being a counselor, it's always helping other individuals with disabilities to find careers. So, I definitely use it to show them how to write cover letters, resumes. Also in their clinical decisions, believe it or not, I've got a lecture tonight. That's why it kind of got away from me a little bit. That I'm going to talk specifically with students on how you use it in the field and the appropriate way to use it. Because what's happening now, things are going so fast. By the time they get out into the field, they've already gotten case management systems where it's adding those components in it. So we really need to train folks on how to use it ethically. So that's kind of my whole little piece. I've got now I can tell you some other things that I'm using it for, which is help with our assessment tools as well. I know a lot of people mentioned about case using it for case studies, but you also can use it for your accreditation standards as well. Because a lot of times what happens is us, we have a tendency to do the same thing, and sometimes thinking outside the box to actually meet that particular outcome is really helpful.
And Dr. Maddux, there's a question in the chat for you. It says, is Party Rock a program that the instructor makes an app for students to use, or do students use Party Rock to make an app as an assignment?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's actually a very interesting question because you can do both. In my class, since I have not graded an actual module to expect students to use AI, so I grade the apps and share the links to the class, and students just need to click the link, enter the inputs, and they can get the outputs from there. But if you try to teach students to create an app with Party Rock, it's also a really great option.
Thank you. Our next question for today is, how have students responded to your use of AI in the classroom, both positively and or negatively?
Um, well, for my classes, for the most part, students love the integration. So with Party Rock and the interactive charts, no installation required, no technical fuss. So they're the big hit. But I have not implemented the automatic Excel yet because it's still in production. But I anticipate a few hiccups because Excel itself is already a foreign concept to some students. And now adding this extra layer of extra enigmatic layer of AI that would change the file type completely. So I expect some students will struggle at first, but I think as soon as we pass that hump, the installation part, then things would go smoothly.
Yeah, I think it depends on the students. I think oftentimes in the beginning of the class and for the past few semesters, I've done it the same way to try and figure out if it'll kind of shift. So I open up the semester kind of talking about using AI and that I use it, that I kind of I was a city fellow and this is how I've kind of engaged with it when I was. But I don't tell them how I first use it. I ask them if they use it and they're kind of standoffish a little bit. But in all of my lectures, they're images, so half my background images are AI. But I take about a week or 3 weeks to tell them that, oh, the images you've seen half of them have been AI, and these are kind of why I generated it before they then are able to, before they can kind of use AI if they want to. So it kind of gives them an opportunity for when I ask them again, like, how have you used AI? So then they'll say, oh, it helped me with a paper, right? And I said, well, how has it helped you? So then we kind of have a conversation about, well, what were the questions you asked, and was that the best way to kind of do that? I've kind of seen it down the middle.
And I have a tendency to agree. It's been relatively positive, but when you ask them the question, I have a majority grad students. When I ask the question, have you used it? Some of them feel like this cheating. And so I think we've done a little bit of a disservice with our students. I guess we probably had the same problem when we introduced computers, that they felt like, oh, we're cheating. Um, but what I try to say is, okay, here is how I have used it. Here's how you could use it. And then we start talking about how do I use it in my workplace, possibly. And then I actually even extend it to what are some of the ethical issues that can come into play with this. What I have found for students, when I do it that way, they start saying, well, like for example, in the research class where I have them to help generate some research questions for them. They can identify because they've read the research. Oh, this is not right. I don't like the way, especially if I'm using Chat GBT, I don't like the way the prompts that it's giving me. Then we talk about, well, how can we better prepare your prompts? Because that's a lot of the students. That's what I do see the difference between undergrad and grad. Sometimes with undergrad, they put something in and they just generate some stuff and they don't analyze it enough to say, wait a minute, something's not right about this. This looks a little plastic. Let me go back in and take a look. So I usually, with my grad students, they can identify that very relatively quickly because they've read a lot of the research and they can go back in. But I learned from another AI training is if you want to use it like that, ask the students to post the prompts and how they got the information, which is very similar to what we would do if they were learning in the library. How did you get it from the database? What did you do? So they can kind of see the steps and you can see the steps that they've done to help them prepare it better. And then what thing did you change? Sometimes I ask them that, what did you change from it? And they're able to articulate it pretty well. So I know that they traditionally know the material, that they just didn't use AI just to put something in to get a grade.
Mhm. Great. So next question is, can you share an example of a student success story where you saw a significant breakthrough in learning as a direct result of integrating AI into your course?
So in my elementary statistics class, in the past, students always struggled. There's a concept called correlation coefficient. And in the past, students always struggle with connecting a scatter plot to the appropriate value of the correlation. And so I try in the past, I try to provide separate static images of different scatter plots with different correlation coefficients and hoping that the student can make a mental connection. But since I integrated the interactive graph and I only needed to show to students once and I could saw they drop their jaws. Wow, now it all makes sense. And all the assessments on that topic went smoothly. Students didn't need my help to complete their assignments on that topic as well. So I took that as a success.
I think for me, because we have a pretty large group of students that have disabilities, I get a lot of neurodivergent learners. And what it has helped from those students is sometimes I see in their writing, it's all over the place. So, especially research, I give you a research class. If I ask them the information, they can articulate it back to me. But if I have them to put it in writing, their writing gets jumbled in their thought process. So when we started using a little bit more AI to help process what they actually really wanted to do, I saw a tremendous difference. And I've got quite a few students, and they're normally my students that what we would call neurodivergent learners, or my students that have learning disabilities, or my students that have high anxiety, especially those that's already clinical diagnosed. It is helping with getting the brainstorming of the writing, especially with research, because with a lot of them, they start seeing research like statistics and they already don't like math anyway. So it is helping get through that process. It's also helping them with data analysis too. So that's kind of the way that I've seen tremendous different from a student that normally would be probably low B, C student to they're actually getting A's now because of it, because it's actually helped them in their writing.
Yeah. Well, just yesterday I was working with a student because they were completing their projects, and he was attempting to create an image with AI, but he didn't like it, and so we were in a session similar to what we've done before. So we were pulling a historical image or a reference image, and I was presenting to him how to make a use a reference image with the image that he had already described in Firefly to produce actually a brand new image, right? So we took two images to make a brand new one, and the act of him actually doing that kind of spurred a lot of thought. So I thought that was just a really good moment. And then in the same kind of breath, some people have anxiety, but I'm big on using media and trying to find your voice, right? And I like documentaries, and so students, it can be a friend, it can be anybody that has a good voice on campus. We want sounds, but they're really leaning into AI for audio. So a lot of them have been using like text to audio. So finding that's been beneficial to them, so that allows them to be more creative, and they feel like they have more control because it's not them, even if they feel uncomfortable with the sound of their voice. So kind of finding to use it that was been helpful.
So we know that there are a lot of benefits in terms of process improvement, efficiency, time management that AI usage contributes to, but we also recognize that there are challenges. And so, what are some of the challenges or limitations you have faced when adopting AI into your courses?
So before using the tools that I'm currently using, I also explore other tools. And one of the biggest issues that I came across was the cost. So not a lot of them are entirely free. It could be free if the traffic is not too high. But if you try to implement them in a big class of 70, 80 students, and you cannot control how many students would access at which time, then there could be uh, some issue with the app. Um, Another issue that I saw was implementation for the same reason. Um, and I also lay a great emphasis on the ability to customize. I want to choose a tool that allows me to customize depending on my needs, on the classifications of students, on students' major, right? And last but not least, I think one of the biggest issue was also the ability to integrate those into the LMS. Because right now, what I'm doing is sharing a link. I wish there could be a tool that we could just incorporate directly, just one click away, one button away on the sidebar of Canvas.
I'm gonna do a little bit of agreeing with you on that. So, for example, I have some outside funding. Well, I have some federal funding, and one of the things that we were able to purchase was called Body Swap. Well, we actually have it for the whole university, but getting it through OIT has been a little bit of an issue. So what we decided to do was just to do a pilot just for this semester. It has an integration already, just like what you're talking about. And we bought it for the whole university. It's a VR AI kind of really nice package, but we haven't been able to, get it through. And I think from my perspective, what I see is that AI is changing so fast. I don't think higher ed is changing fast enough with it. So, I like, for example, I know Blackwell. I went to one of your workshops, and that Firefly that I showed my students, and they were like, "Ooh, great!" Now there's like a ton of them out there. So, staying up with what the newfangled thing, and I always wanted to be one of those that early adopters, but I can't stay up with as fast as AI is changing. And that goes back to the cost and how we use it in higher ed and someone to evaluate whether it's appropriate. Because one of the problems is they're in today, out tomorrow. I remember grading assistant used to be a big one. Now grading assistant's out. I've got co-grader. So it's just a lot of different things that the university could use, but I don't think we're fast enough in getting these tools incorporated so that we could try out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everybody, what everyone is saying. I think the big one is cost. I love free 99. I tell my students I believe in free 99. So, we blend them. We blend them. I build from what we know. I said we're an Adobe campus, start from what is free first. And, if we're using, I don't use ChatGPT because now you can search what you search. That's just a thing. But yeah. But I try to tell them to use multiple ones at one time. So integrate at least two to three different ones. Try to have them, break a little bit, try to conflict with them a little bit, but also maybe because I'm a historian, so at the end of the day, we have to be reading first. Like, if you put anything into, generative AI large learning language model, it's going to give you anything. But if you don't know the basics or, beyond the basics of what you're reading, you don't even know the question of what to ask. So I always try to pull back and say, okay, we have all these tools and all these things, but, what is our foundation? And I think trying to build from that kind of is where I'm at now because there are so many apps. So I just say, okay, these are the four I'm using right now. And the other ones, I'll just say if they do work, Yolanda, like you were saying, I'll come back to them. If they're still around, but they might update. Or like Adobe Firefly has 6 or 8 different apps within it now, and they all do different things. And some are premium, so that even has like this built-in cost.
Okay, so we've heard that cost, implementation, integration with the LMS are some of the challenges or limitations. So let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. How do we address ethical concerns such as bias, academic integrity, or over-reliance on AI by students? What do we do?
I think we
Yes.
need to be faster on getting the policies in place. Just like with WSSU, we kind of rushed the draft of the policies because we did it over the summer, and I don't think we had a real discussion with all faculty about it. So that's my one thing is that we really need to. I feel like we're behind the eight ball. So I've just been addressing it with my students because I know that's a component is ethical consideration. So I try to address it with them. As well.
Um, so for bias, actually in the past, I graded a module on AI ethics in one of my stat classes. And in this class, I constantly remind the students that AI is using the data that we graded and is going to reflect the bias that we see in our society. So the key is to question the output and never just blindly accept it. I even show the dialogue between me and ChatGPT and Gemini to my students, and they could see the back and forth bickering between me and the chatbot because the chatbot is wrong a lot of times, and I had to yell at it to fix. And for over reliance, so I think we've been through this before with calculators. We've moved from no calculators to when do we use calculators? And so with this, I want students to, I don't discourage students to use AI, but for in-class assessments, they must show steps and reasoning to prove that they actually understanding the concepts.
Yeah, I look at it a lot of different ways, and I think I may be overthinking the question, but when we think about kind of over reliance, I talk to students a lot, but definitely in their papers that you're not the purpose is not to use AI in your paper, and that doesn't mean use in terms of it's your outline, right? But we've already by the time I've assigned the paper, I've given you the prompts. I've asked you to use the library because you don't go to the library, so they're using specific access to already digital archives because before there was AI, we have digital humanities, so I'm slowly kind of going with them through those stages so that if they're trying to use the paper for AI, I've seen people do that. It's very difficult because you have to use very specific sources in your own creative way. So we kind of have that kind of conversation. But now what I found recently, we have the same issues and they just kind of stack. So when students procrastinate, then they'll lean into AI in negative ways. So some groups of my students, we're watching our documentaries. We're gonna finish them tomorrow. And some groups, they procrastinated too long, so they used too much AI in their films, and it's very obvious. Other groups didn't, so you can tell when one group didn't and one group did not. So now I'm preparing to talk about the ethics of how we can better address that after we finish our things on Thursday, which was brand new. I didn't think I would have to do that, but that realizing that I have to constantly, even if we have a policy, it's still going to be this moment where students are going to engage with it differently. So I'm not offended when that happens. I look at it and I think, oh, I should have introduced it better. I should have added a bit more guardrails. And that's how I address AI, but I also address it by data centers, right? So now I'm talking a lot more in class about data centers and about how power bills are increasing and about, how are we becoming too reliant on technology that's not effective or how effective is it? So I'm also looking at it outside of just us, making creative images or asking it, how can I scale up my business? Um, you know, if it makes sense.
And that's a perfect segue to the next question. So, what balance then do you see between human-centered teaching and AI-driven support in the classroom?
I think. Uh,
You can go
Uh,
first.
Okay, I'm starting to think that human-centered teaching is always going to be important, because I think as Yolanda was saying, these companies or these apps disappear so quickly, but also we're at the whim of the philosophy or the ideology behind these companies, and we don't know, So we know that there are lawsuits out for people that are suing them for IP, but the information that Grok might generate or ChatGPT might generate or Gemini might generate is deeply influenced by information behind people that are designing it or those thought processes. So. Um, that's also what I'm keeping at the forefront of my mind in terms of the information we're getting back. And so it's important as educators that we have to filter that information out. Just if you go into a library and you don't have a librarian, it's just a bunch of books. You can't find anything. So I think being able to use our skills and leverage those is becoming even more critically important.
And it's kind of funny you said that because I've got a lecture tonight that talks about AI within rehab counseling. And so one of the prompts that came out of my AI asking it for a lecture was that it could not, it can't legally diagnose. And it even said it. So we don't legally diagnose, but if you're training students, this is what. So it gave me a case, it gave me all the stuff. But it did say I can't legally diagnose. But I also know that there's some programs where it's spot on the money, pretty closely to it. So that's what we're going to actually be addressing tonight, because I want them to start thinking because a lot of people are making decisions and they don't understand what AI is. Can we replace people? I mean, if you think about the federal government, there are some actual jobs where they're thinking about replacing individuals on making decisions. So, for example, for Social Security, they're going to now thinking we don't need so many people to process your Social Security paperwork. We'll just do it for you using AI. We'll also make decisions on your disability, whether you have one or not. But traditionally, that wasn't done by AI. It was done by an actual person that could read your information and process to see. So this is going to be a lecture tonight for them to actually think through what that's going to look like because they're going to be the decision makers really soon. And they need to think through what does this really look like.
So with the way that I use AI in my class, specifically Party Rock app could be a tireless tutor for students in my class. So one of the apps that I created was students would put in the lecture slides, and Party Rock app would print out all the highlights, important topics, grade of 5 or 10 practice problems of those topics. And then there's also a chat box to allow students to ask questions if they have any concerns, any questions about those problems, right? So they with that app, student can get help anytime, like as late as 10 p.m. at night, right? But it doesn't stop students from coming to me for help because a classroom is not just a place where we learn things academically, but also a place where we grow as a person, as a citizen, right? And that emotional scaffolding, the encouragement when students struggle, and the celebration of their growth, AI cannot do that.
So I want you to think for a moment as visionaries, and we're looking down the road a few years from now. And so, what role do you think AI will play in the future of teaching and learning within the higher education context?
I'm a
Um,
big
oh,
science
go ahead.
fiction buff. So um, I think it's going to play a pivotal role just like computers did. I don't see that being a whole lot of difference. I think for us, we really need to think through how we're using it and the most appropriate way to use it because we really haven't. I think this, I told one of the faculty, the horse has left the barn. It's gone now. So you can't say don't use it at all because I've had faculty say you can't use it at all. And then we have checkers out there now where if they use it, they can have it where you won't even be able to tell that they used it. So, saying you can't use it at all doesn't work. So we kind of have to lean into it. But the question really would be is what do we really want our students to be able to do? So if I want critical thinking counselors, I really need to think through this. AI may or may not produce that. So I really need to think through what's the best ways to use it appropriately.
I think regular assessment is gonna break traditional take-home essays or and problem sets that they essentially easy to put in AI and then generate an AI could generate B plus A plus level work instantly. So I think we need to, as a faculty, we need to be creative in the way that we grade assessments. Um, Probably in class, handwritten assessments for foundation skills, or we should bring back oral exams or presentations to actually truly gauge students' knowledge. And on the bright side, faculty will spend less time on routine grading, on grading simple problems, but instead, our role, I think, will evolve into designing rich learning experiences and facilitate the use of AI among because it could get extremely overwhelming among the amount of information on the internet and from AI.
I like that idea. I also like a lot of science fiction. So I also ask my students, what would you do if you could time travel? So I need to think about it in the future. I think it's a helpful tool. I think reflecting on kind of the how the internet kind of has integrated itself with us. I think what Yolanda was mentioning, we still have to grapple with kind of these ethical decisions and whether or not it'll kind of be kind of kept at a distance from people because of these data centers and kind of where they are. But I also do think it'll really, as Val was saying, enhance kind of our teaching. Hopefully rote memorization will be a thing of the past and we'll kind of develop really good critical thinkers, which would mean that it would have to have a tremendous impact kind of on primary education in terms of altering how students are getting information. Because right now students grab information and they're regurgitating an answer. But I always ask them, well, let's go deeper. So perhaps it will create an environment where students are, you know, looking at these tools to enhance their learning the way that the university should function, and hopefully that'll reflect kind of in this wider space because it can help people if they are asking the right prompts. And really it does come down to, I think, people asking the right questions to these tools, which is the same thing that we do if we go into a library. If we don't know the right question, then it's just a space full of books maybe, that don't help us.
So I want to pause for a moment before I pose our concluding question to give all of those who joined us today. Do you have any questions for our panelists? You can either enter your question in the chat or you can feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself to pose your question. I'm using my wait time. Waited 5 to 7 seconds. Okay. If not, I do have a concluding question for our panel. And so we've heard a lot about Adobe Firefly, Body Swap, ChatGPT, CodeGrader, Party Rock. Are there any additional AI tools or resources that you would recommend to our colleagues who've joined us today? If you had to create maybe your top three to say, please try these or consider these in your courses, what would those be?
I use NVIDIA a lot. I use that to make like that makes really good trailers. So like for my online class, I made a trailer to introduce my class, and that made it really good. Runway is good for voice to text. I use that for my when I don't want to use when the students don't want to use their voice, we use the audio voice. That's really good. And then I have the students when they use them. Well, send me the ones you use. So hopefully that'll generate a bigger list. Those are my three, and then and of course Adobe, and then Gemini and Copilot, and I'll use those.
Um, Party Rock is my favorite so far. But besides that, uh, I would not recommend any specific tool because it also depends on what you need in your class. Because one size is not a one size fits all solution. So the reason that I came to the tools that I'm using right now start with is because I start with what do I need to fix in my class, what I need to improve, and then I start to look up to see with those weakness, what can I do? How can I automate things? And then I start to narrow down some tools and weigh the pros and cons. The cost, of course, was a big factor, and I'm still learning AI tools out there. So besides Party Rock, I don't have any other recommendations.
For me, co-grader, because one of my issues was as we had to teach more classes, which I probably shouldn't be, but I am. Um, I want to get the information faster back to the student. That's been my big pet peeve, regardless. And that's been for the last 24 years. You know how, especially with a lot of writing assignments, and you've got 30 in the class or 25, and I've got grad students. I really need to give them the feedback quicker. So I use CoGrader, and CoGrader actually can be embedded inside of Canvas. We ain't there yet. Let me just say, we easily could be, but we not there yet. Very easily. The other one that I have used that I liked is InVideo. InVideo is an AI. You can create it. You also can create it in different languages. You also can use somebody else's voice. So I like that. I had them to do an example of we wanted a recruitment video or something, and I showed folks, and it took all of less than probably 2 to 3 minutes for one, and you can do it in different ways. It can be uh, YouTube video, one of those short YouTube short kind of snippets. You could do it in a variety of ways, and then you can go in and change the text. So it does the AI voiceover, so you can see the actual voice, the transcript of it. You can go in and change it. So if it's something you don't like, it's too static, you can change that. That's sped up because I know how to do it regularly, but I'm not gonna go into Adobe and do the whole video. That's gonna take way too long because I learned it in grad because I took instructional design and I haven't used them skills in about 15 years, but this was so wonderful because it was quick. Um, I'm trying to think others that I have used. I've used a variety, but what I like to do is sometimes go to other people's workshops and see what they have done. Now I'm getting regular information about AI workshops, even within WSSU and outside of WSSU. And so when I go to them, especially, I like to see how other people are using it. And then I'll play with it a little bit to see how that will work for me. Because it's all going to be a little different. I know I saw one question in the box that talked about a degree of plagiarism. And let me give a good example of that. So I've used CoGrader. CoGrader will tell me it kind of combines a couple things. It combines like turnitin.com, so you can see the grammatical pieces and all of that. But it also has an AI, what percentage of AI that they use. Here's the problem with that. For some students, that might not be correct. Let me just say it like that. So they might have not used AI, but they would have been graded as AI, like they used it heavily. And I've kind of shied away from that because when you start saying to students you use it and they didn't, and then they can prove that they didn't, how you gonna prove that they didn't? Because with AI, nothing's perfect. So what this I did this semester is, even if it was a little high up there, I gave them the feedback and I asked them to redo it to change it because it's looking like it's close to like I would do with turnitin.com. Your paper looked 45% let's see how we can change it. So I turn it into a teachable moment with them instead of penalizing them all the time. I think students get enough penalty pieces, especially for my grad students, because if they get an F, they're out the program. So I don't want to penalize them like that. I want to turn it into a learning aspect. So that's one way to really, you really kind of need to think through about the degree of plagiarism and then start asking them, even if you let them use AI, how you using the prompts. I did that for an assignment, and I learned that. I think this summer I went to a workshop and they said, well, start asking the students how they're using the prompts. I asked them to put the prompts in there. I can see how they got the information. And then we talked about appropriate uses. So that's another way. I think we're going to really have to, and I know you talked about the which program, but I think for faculty, we're going to have to really start thinking outside the box and stop doing the same thing. And I think Blackwell talked about this a whole lot, but it really needs to be addressed again. I think we got. I'm gonna call it lazy. Okay. I mean, I've been in 24 years. Sometimes you get a little lazy, and then you start doing the same thing over and over, and you're gonna have to start thinking outside. How can I do this differently? Because that's what we're here for.
You all have addressed many of the questions that were in the chat, but there is one outstanding question. What would you suggest as a first step AI integration in the classroom if you currently have minimal to no integration?
I would do this. This is how I started. I started noticing something in the classroom that I either I had a problem with or the students was having a problem with. And then I went to chat. I like Chat GPT. I mean, I've used Copilot. I've used quite a few others, but that's just my go-to one. And I started saying, I have this issue. What suggestions do you have? You'll be surprised what suggestions that I got. I was quite shocked. And then remember, it's a learning tool. So the more information you give, but remember about the privacy issue too. So you don't want to give too much information, but you want to give enough to see what it gives you. And I like it for the suggestion. I can take it from there. I don't need for you to give me too much in detail, but I like it for the suggestions that it gives. And that's what I use it for because a lot of times I'm short on time. And so that helps me speed up the process a little bit.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on Dr. Edwards' answer. Um, I play with large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude a lot before I started to implement things in my class. Um, and also in the process of playing with those tools, I learned a very critical skill that would help us to get a more desirable responses from those tools. It is called prompt engineering. It sounds probably a little bit intimidating, but basically that is a skill of how we should frame the questions and how detailed how the how the structure should go in order to get a specific kind of answer. And yeah, and I think that was it for me.
I just think build from what you know, and you don't always have to make it academic. Like I like food, so I think I started building from like stuff I knew, like what was the history of the tomato? Because I had my lecture about like history of food, but in terms of stuff I already knew that was very simple, and so when they got it wrong, I knew, oh, that's the way to tweak it, or since I'm a historian, I ask it very specific historical questions, and then I'll know that it can't do that because that's probably something that they're flagging as unethical, which is not. So then that allows me to think about, well, how are they creating their kind of programs. And so if you build from what you know, and then you can integrate that into the classroom. Or if you've been working on a project for, a few years, throw that prompt into AI. How would you design this project? Don't give it everything that you've done, and then it might enhance it. How would you enhance a project that used to be, brick and mortar to make it more digital? And it will scale that up for you and say, oh, okay. And then you just roll it out slowly, and that's how you can kind of integrate it little by little. And since we're in Adobe campus, you can start with Adobe because it's free 99 here. So build from that as well because it's at our fingertips. And that's how I started.
Thank you. Can you all please join me in giving our panelists a virtual round of applause for today? Great job, you all. Before you all vacate the premises, I just want to give you a few reminders. Please check your email from the communication that came out from Citi inviting you to our last AI workshop for the month of October. Party Rock and Roll that'll be scheduled for next week. We do have in November, we will have another virtual session where we have a guest facilitator coming from Howard University who will be sharing about AI in the humanities. Um, the video from our panel today will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and I will send that communication and correspondence out to everyone. And in that same email, please complete the brief evaluation to get your feedback about how everything went on today. So thank you for taking this time to join us today. Thank you to each of our panelists for sharing your insights and for each of you for engaging with us. And we will connect again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremiah, may I ask